All right, that looks like a composition to me. So I'm photographing these 3 trees over here. Might even be 4 or 5, I'm not quite sure. What makes the image is the angle that I'm shooting from. Because from here, all of these trees have these big mossy stumps, like branches. And it just looks like they are all like intertwined and entangled with each other. It may be a little bit chaotic, but it looks so enchanted of how all of these branches are grabbing into each other, just like a foreboding magical forest. That's exactly how this image looks like. The way that I'm standing on, it leads right along the trees. So I'm including that into my image just to give it some side interest. And this way has a little bit of curvature and S-curve, which is beautiful. It just like, it shows this path of like hills and curve, and then you have this, as I've mentioned, these enchanted trees right next to it. It just looks beautiful, especially in these very dull conditions. And then you have the mossy green and a little bit of the storyline of how you proceed further into the image on this way and then along the trees. So when I first come across this composition, I was debating to go with a wide angle lens and then go closer to the trees and then try to make it all work in a wide angle shot. But I think this angle from here with the telezoom works so much better just because the telecompression, it just gives a lot of depth to this image. Well, so I just walked along the trees that I've just photographed, and while walking, a bird revealed itself behind one of the trees. It was like a bigger one. Like, I don't even know how they're called. In Germany we call them V. They're like these bigger birds, and they have these beautiful blue feathers which they can stick up probably to protect themselves. So I just quickly decided to become a wildlife photographer and shoot a couple of images from that guy, which honestly looked really cool in the environment. He was like half hidden between some taller grass and everything, just the head sticking out and then these blue feathers. So I've only seen them in zoos before, but seems like he likes it over here. So yes, I'm not really sure how to film myself in this very tight space over here, but I just half crawled into the bush over here because I wanted to get this image. So I'm photographing a couple of branches over here, and they fully entailed in beautiful moss, but only like halfway. That makes it quite interesting. So the moss is very outwardly grown. It's not like a little bit on the surface, but it's like fully entailed, as I've just mentioned. And the last couple of days it has rained quite a bit, so there's still a lot of humidity and wetness, and just makes it so vivid and so full of life. It's such a beautiful saturated green. It just so much humidity, like water in there. You can actually see some water droplets still on the surface. And then in contrast to all of the dull flat conditions over here. So I'm still playing around with composition a bit. I want to achieve 3 things. First of all, I want the main focus to be on the moss, just because that's where the most interest is, and that is what caught my interest, why I wanted to shoot this image. Secondly, I still want you to see the upper part of the stump, because it creates some interest, because they all seem to cut off the moss at kind of like the same height. And thirdly, I want to go for a wide angle shot, just because I really want to be close to the branches and have this kind of like immersive feeling from this image. So just a look in terms of my aperture. If I go for f13, then I can get all of the branches, all of the moss, about 90% sharp and then focused. But if I switch to f8, then the branches in the front are going to be sharp, and then towards the back it's fading off a little bit. And I'm not really sure what I prefer, because they both look kind of cool. Yeah, so probably just decide later on a computer. So cool, there's so much texture and detail in all the moss. Yeah, I really like that. nice lady just walked by on the path over here. She was probably thinking, what is he doing over there in the bush just with a camera photographing some random moss? And it's so fun being creative over here. So these days it's really about like immersing yourself into the landscape, finding small compositions here and there that you like, just like the previous one, and then really getting into a creative flow. And even if it's just like a simple image with some moss and some branches, like be creative and you're gonna have a good time. And so I think this is the best way to enjoy landscape photography, especially on these days when conditions are not amazing and you don't have the biggest landscape around you. If you're having the same struggle as I do, especially in these unideal conditions over here, I have Moody woodland presets available, which are specifically designed to give you moody, atmospheric and dramatic looking woodland images in any circumstances. The pack contains 8 presets for all different circumstances and then 5 local adjustments presets, so you can really fine-tune your images to your liking. If you're interested in the process of learning more about landscape photography, I have a course available where I teach you everything you need to know. Being out in the field, settings of the camera, post-processing, everything there's to know to start out. Definitely give it a look. It's a top link in the description. So a couple of meters behind me there's a small cafe, and I think they're setting something up, so if you're hearing some random music, that's why. Okay, let's talk about my image. I found these fern grasses over here, and there are a lot of them along this river over here, but this one in particular stood out to me just because a couple of the leaves are immersed into the water and just looked very, very interesting. Yeah, so I quite like this minimalistic river over here, and then this fern grass kind of like half in the water and half sticking out. It just looked very interesting. Also, like the fern still has this very greenish look to it. I quite like that. So I'm shooting a very narrow frame because I really just want you to look at the fern and the one point where it's in the water, and then everything else is just distraction. What I do quite like about this image, that naturally it has a lot of contrast in it. I think the first one is color contrast, just because we have all of these brown leaves on the ground and then this very dull water, and then yeah, the fern grass is still very saturated, very light green, so that gives some color contrast. But also like the light, because if I switch my camera to black and white, where I also think this image would work quite well, just the fern grass is so much brighter than all of the rest, so that really works beautifully. I'm not quite sure yet, but maybe I'm going to show you the color in the black and white version of this image, because in black and white with the contrast, I do quite like that all of the other distractions in the image, like some random branches and everything, kind of like fading even more into the background, and yeah, really can focus on the leaves just because the contrast is more emphasized in black and white. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Like, share, subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications. If you want to see more of my videos, I have an on-location playlist in the description. Check out the presets and the course, and thank you for the support. See you in the next one.